Kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back. Oh, messages. Oh, that's you. Hi. My watch.
Hi.
Did you know my watch bullies me?
I think that's fair because somebody's got to.
So that was actually the reason it went buzzed. Can you see that? That's actually you retweeting the tweet. That's why it buzzed. My watch bullies me. Every now and again it goes, I think it's about time you stood up. And I'm like, ah. And then when I stand up, it goes, you did it.
I love Apple Watches for how patronizing they get.
Yeah. Hey, exciting news. Shall I push it? Shall I push play?
Yeah, go on.
Ready? Here we go. Tomorrow night, live at 10 p.m, Paula Penfold's joining us. We hope for the hour. Me and Paula had a chat today, both waxing lyrical about being old Gen Xers, being able to stay up so late.
Party hard.
Now, we have talked about Fire and Fury, the documentary on Stuff, or kind of adjacent issues all of this week, to do with voices for fuckwits and their people going into, local body politics and stuff. Is that right? Did I get that right, that title? I get confused each time.
It is so confusing, but I think it's important
is that not what it is?
Maintain their messaging.
All right. And so I messaged Paula today and just said, dude, I actually said to her, how can I twist your arm to get you to come on? And I put a little smiley face. You know, the halo, the angel one with the halo over it and the smiley face. She was like, yeah, cool, let's do it. So tell your friends. And I know there were a lot of people who are following us along kind of, through the Byron Callagher world and through the anti-fascist world, because we've done quite a bit on this as we're doing it. Tomorrow night is one to tell your friends about, okay? Paula Penfold is the chief reporter and investigator for the Fire and Fury documentary. Of course, that was released last weekend on Stuff Circuit, stuff.co.nz, and she'll be with us live tomorrow night. So therefore we'll be, I typically do a podcast with Paula every time she releases a documentary. And I thought, rather than doing it on my other thing, why don't we do it on here? Because then we're live streaming and people can come along and participate and ask questions and get blocked and banned and, all that kind of fun stuff.
Hey, I try to have a light hand.
Now, Chewy, we've already talked about this, but just to reiterate, you'll be along, because if you're along tomorrow night, because you're my beautiful knight in white shining armor or whatever that is to do with the chats, and you can sort of, I'm not saying not be involved in general conversation, but certainly can be in charge of the chats and can be feeding us questions and comments from there as well as participating in the chat as well. Evening, people who are already saying evening to us in the chat. If you're participating with us tonight, if you're here tonight, by the way, that banner's going to roll all night long. All night long. Have you got that? I used to talk about, the Ministry of Sound, which was the the DJ Electric. Yeah, I used to talk about having the Ministry of 80s music. It was like this. Every time someone would say a sentence or a comment, I like, 3 times a day, I have a song that pops into my head. And I've already done that on the show this week. I think I've already sung, haven't I, on the show this week?
I've certainly got one that gets me in a lot of trouble. When people lose something and they're looking for something frantically?
Yeah.
There's a song called "Have You Checked Your Butthole?"
Oh, yeah, we've talked about that.
You
showed me this when you came out for dinner.
Yeah. It's physically impossible for me to respond with anything but that if someone's looking. If people want to know what I'm talking about, search "Have You Checked My Butthole" by Tom Cardy. It will change your life and your friends will hate you forever.
All right. So tomorrow night, you definitely have to be here tomorrow. Yep. Look, Threads in Time already saying tomorrow will be interesting. It will be. Paula's, you're beating me to it. Paula's legend. She's an amazing human being. She's great fun to talk to. And yeah, I'm really excited. She's coming on this iteration of our show, which is a little bit more Wild West than my podcast, which is a little bit more ordered and kind of organized. This is a bit more Wild West, but I talked to someone about her coming on tomorrow night today, and I was like, I was wondering, and if you're watching, Paula, this is what I was wondering, if that there needs to be a line of demarcation between sort of nutters getting access and staying away from it, because we heard from various people this week that there's death threats and that kind of stuff, but then they pointed out, the person I was talking to pointed out, but she went to the protest in Wellington and had people literally here screaming at her. It's in the documentary, and got walked out of the area by massively misogynistic toxic male aggression, right behind her. So actually some keyboard warriors tomorrow night, probably sweet as, bro. So when that was reminded to me by a very wise person I was speaking to today, I was like, yeah, fair point actually. And look, the thing we're going to do is basically have a podcast. Actually, I still don't know what we call this: broadcast, live stream, news show. But tomorrow night will be sort of more of a podcast, long form conversation with someone. We've done these before on Friday nights, and that's what tomorrow night will be. And we'll just spend hopefully the whole hour chatting to Paula, getting your interactions, and finding out about Fire and Fury. So look, if you've got questions and comments, I'll probably put the link up tomorrow in the early afternoon, because if it's a one-off show, I don't have to wait to see what the news of the night is. We can just get onto it, which actually means from sort of early to mid-afternoon tomorrow, you can probably start submitting questions and comments if you want to.
Oh yeah, that'd be a big help actually.
Yeah. So if you want to. Anyway, tonight, obviously the biggest news story of the night right now is that Gaurav Sharma has spoken out. It won't be his last interview, but it possibly could be his last interview as a member of the Labour Party, with some pretty strong allegations. Now, let's have a look at a part of the conversation. Newshub got the exclusive. I'm not entirely sure whether this is actually, as we speak, there's headlines coming in about it still now. Labour MPs to consider expelling Gaurav Sharma from Caucus. So that's happening right now as we speak. Because this was an exclusive, I sort of expect somewhere on Newshub you might find the 20-minute conversation as well. But obviously in the 6 o'clock news tonight was the 3-minute cut down version of the story. So let's have a look at that. I've got a few notes on it that we can stop on the way through. And as you know, Chewy, we can always Sam C to this thing and shout out if you want it to be paused, and we can pause it and find our way through. There are also some follow-up conversations and some conversations as to how some people are responding to it. We're going to talk a little bit later on about all the Munters running for local body politics. So says Lloyd Burr from Toda FM. And we're going to have a look. Actually, shall I show it now? I've already tweeted out the article. So if you're following me on Twitter, go and have a look and you can respond there early. But if you haven't heard yet about this story, I think it's a school in Tauranga or in the Bay of Plenty who had a pretty graphic sex ed conversation with their kids, and some parents are pretty unhappy about it. I kind of sometimes feel like a 50s dad, and I sometimes feel like sort of an enlightened lefty as well. I kind of float, you know what I mean? And I don't know where I sit on this one, if I'm enlightened lefty or 50s dad, because I read it and think about, I have a 13-year-old, right, who very recently was an 11-year-old, approximately 2 years ago. That's how maths works. And I wonder if my 11-year-old had been sitting in class getting what I'm going to read to you, how I would have felt as a parent. And I genuinely don't know. So if you are a parent, go have a look at the document I've already put on Twitter. But, if you don't want to go off and you want to stay with us because we're amazing, it'll be coming up here later on anyway. Sweet Bix?
Yep.
Let's have a look at Gaurav and his conversation on Newshub tonight.
Yeah, Gaurav Sharma has come out swinging. In fact, he's hit the nuclear button. He's accusing the Prime Minister and her office of a cover-up. He says the Labour Party held a kangaroo court to
Can I say, first of all, with the greatest of respect to Gaurav Sharma, who is an MP, which is an important place to be, and he got a local electorate. Cover-up sounds like you think pretty highly of yourself. You know what I mean? Like my gut reaction when I heard that. Now, look, I'm not saying he's wrong. I mean, we've been saying all the way through if she's right, if he's right, if they're right, if they're wrong. So because we don't know the inner workings. But what a backbencher who's been there for 12 months doesn't seem to have the height of importance to someone requiring, the Espionage Act to be worried about. You know what I'm saying? Just a wondering about that word. So, okay, let's have a listen.
His fate, and he's played Newshub a recording of another MP saying to him that the outcome of the caucus meeting in which he was suspended was predetermined the night before. The timeline here is crucial. Last Thursday, Sharma wrote in a column which he made bullying claims. On Tuesday, Labor held its special caucus meeting, which resulted in his suspension. But the night before, the entire caucus, excluding Sharma, met to discuss the rogue MP. And after that meeting, someone who was in it phoned Sharma, warning that what he would face the next day would be, quote, brutal.
All right, so the story's about to start, but there you go, Chewy. Got anything before we get into the actual story? That's an unfortunate picture, a photo of a man's puku, but there you go. I'd rather have that puku than mine. Yep.
Well, I mean, if this is true, this really fits with what I thought was quite a strange thing, that he knew that this important caucus meeting was coming, and he was really like, "Oh, I'll go if I can fit it in." Like, it was a really blasé, like, I don't give a fuck attitude to something that was basically deciding his place in the party.
Also, when the Prime Minister said every other MP that was in New Zealand changed their schedule to be there. So I don't know how many are overseas, but there's 65, including him, I think 65 Labour MPs. So you got to think 60 plus MPs changed their schedule to be there. So that's part of that conversation.
And it does change it from being like, I can't be bothered with this, to, well, you guys have already made up your mind to get fucked. I'm not going to turn up for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I want to hear the recording. I actually want to see a transcript of the recording. I'll keep my powder dry a little bit for one thought. Now, I want to make it really clear as well. As we always say, the whole walking and chewing gum thing, if this is accurate as he's portrayed it, then it's a really bad look for Labor. I don't think it's necessarily anything that's going to blow up in their face, because any Labor Party or Labor, whatever the name of the group party is, not the caucus, can eject a person for any reason they want, anytime they want. You know what I mean? It's like if you've got the right not to renew someone's contract at a business for whatever reason, fine. But it's certainly not a good look, and we so often talk about optics. If what he's saying is correct and what the Prime Minister has said is not correct, then the optics of it are terrible, because the optics of it are there is lies being told from the pulpit. I would say pulpit. What's it called when you stand behind those wooden things? Pulpit's a church phrase. I don't know what the other one is. But we also have been told, either preemptively for this issue or because it's accurate, that one of the big problems in the situation, this is what we've been told, remember, not what I'm saying is 100% factually correct. We've also been told that no one disputes the facts of what happened last week, but they're being interpreted different ways. So part of me does wonder if actually what they're both saying is correct. And I won't keep my powder dry. I'll say it now. We're going to hear a little bit about what was said on that tape. They've revoiced it to protect the innocent. Chewy, if I had a meeting, like, you don't know this yet, Chewy, but Twitter has met with me about concerns around you and your Twitter account. And no decisions have been made yet. No, but no decisions have been made yet, Chewy. But just so you know, confidentially, most people in the room, I think, are going to vote against you tomorrow. It's going to be brutal. Now, the way I've worded that to you is exactly what has been said, but it could also be that the Prime Minister is truthful in saying that no decision had been made. But, Chewy, when we're all in that room talking about your Twitter account, there was pretty much no good responses to that, mate. I don't reckon it's going to be good tomorrow, mate. It's going to be brutal. Do you know what I mean? So that's why I'd really like to see the actual transcript of the audio that he secretly recorded. You Labor Party MPs have learned nothing of this man so far, and then released a Newshub. So I'm not saying that to defend the Labor position, but it's really important to know the context and exactly what was said, and we don't have that yet. So there's still a part of this conversation which is ongoing, to me at least anyway. Should we keep going, shall we?
Yep, absolutely.
All right, into the actual story.
Silence broken.
What is the Prime Minister trying to hide? There is something very big going on here, and there is a cover-up.
Dr. Gaurav Sharma has not spoken publicly since he was suspended from the Labour Party. He's not even spoken to the Prime Minister, but he's speaking to us. He's got a lot to get off his chest.
I'm here now speaking up again because I'm being silenced once again after having gone through it for 1.5 years.
Sharma torpedoed his party into scandal, drip-feeding drama for the past week until his caucus unanimously voted to suspend him on Tuesday. He's now come to us with evidence at least one of his colleagues backs him. A secret recording Sharma took of an MP who recounted Monday night's secret Labour meeting, a meeting that excluded him.
I was genuinely hurt by that.
Newshub knows who the MP is, but we've revoiced the recording to protect their identity. The MP tells Sharma his fate was sealed at that meeting.
It's all predetermined. This is purely just to get them where they want to be, which is for Caucus to be aware that a decision will need to be made, and that will be, it's going to be to...
So there you go. There's the first part of the conversation, voiced very badly by someone of the Newshub officers. It's gonna be to whack you. Again, and look,
it's a weird term of phrase.
I'm not saying that this is actually what's happened, but Chewy, I have to tell you, mate, when we were in that meeting about Twitter, there was, it's all predetermined. I think they're just going to be out there to get you. They want to cover their asses. You're going to get whacked tomorrow. It's going to be brutal. Doesn't necessarily mean that the decision has been made.
Mm.
Do you know? Look, just saying, because the accusation from Gaurav Sharma is that the decision was made the night before. Now, the decision may have been made in the eyes of everyone there. They might have all been like eye rolling and go, we know what's going to happen, i.e. it's predetermined. But actually what the Prime Minister might be saying might also be correct, which is that different thing, which is the vote was held the next day, which was the official thing. Do you know what I'm saying? Oh, he knows what I'm saying. We'll keep listening as he freezes out.
Whack you.
It's a kangaroo court in a banana republic. I could show up and, the decision was already made the night before.
Earlier in the week, the Prime Minister was adamant there was no predetermination.
You have my assurance and word here. It would not have been keeping within the rules to make any predetermination, and we were very clear that we wouldn't, and we didn't.
Do you think she misled the public when she said that?
Definitely.
The PM has made plain Sharma himself was being managed due to staffing issues. Several allegations of bullying have been made against him.
From Cambridge.
So you can completely refute the allegations?
Every single one of them, and that's what I've been saying.
All Sharma wants...
I thought that was a really interesting point, Joey. You can refute the allegations. What were the words? Every single one of them, i.e., those multitude of accusations against me from all sorts of different people, they're all wrong. Now, they might be all wrong. We don't know. But I don't want to be so overly simple that say, when there's smoke, there's fire. But there's every single one of them. I thought that was an interesting phrase that he used, acknowledging that there was multiple complaints against him. They're all wrong and I'm right. Doesn't mean he's not right.
It's a big swing.
It's a big swing. It's a big swing.
What's out of this is an investigation into bullying claims, something the MP who phoned him said he was not going to get.
She doesn't want to be opened up to a QC investigation or anything that could put the gaze on any other issue or any other colleague. They want it squarely on you.
There you go. I'll leave you on that before I offer any thoughts. Chewy, what do you think? She doesn't want to be opened up to some sort of QC investigation or anything out that could put the gaze on any other issue.
Why would it be a QC investigation?
Is that the person who's doing Uffendale? She's a QC, isn't she? Maybe there's a comparison there.
But I think he's drawing a parallel there for something that, like, if this guy wasn't in Parliament, this would be a pretty straightforward employment sort of issue.
Yeah.
And he's not doing any favors to himself. He's
gone
for damn sure.
He's gone. I mean, there's no question. I mean, one of the things that they said, like, let's be fair to Gaurav Sharma, even if he's 70% right in all his facts and figures, and let's say that's correct. I mean, as I said before, the Labour Party have said, if you speak out, you're gone.
Mm. Well, I'm going to speak out more then.
Yeah, but
that's weird.
Yeah. So he'll be gone from Labour next week, one would think, and he'll be an independent in Parliament. And as I tweeted out when this happened, I bet you Labour are thanking the good Lord that they've got a 5-seat majority and not a 1-seat majority right now, like happens in sometimes Parliament. If they had a 1-seat majority, imagine the scorched earth that would come with that. with a dead duck government potentially for the next 12 months. A lame duck, I should say.
Yeah.
So anyway, so again, when I say I want to see the transcript, I want to see what the question was before this as well. You know, like if Dr. Sharma said something like, you know, was there any talk about getting a QC to investigate this? Then that makes this response different to this being offered out of nowhere. So again, I want to make it clear. I'm not saying Gaurav Sharma is being inaccurate, but I'm equally not saying that the Labour Party is being inaccurate. We need more information to make that determination completely factual. And it could be one of those instances, as I've said, where both sides are correct in their perspective, even if the facts are there. Like, you know, Chewy, you and me go for a game of golf, yeah? Right? We play the same game of golf. We end up with the same score at the end of it, but because you're a better golfer than me, you had a bad game and I had a good game.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Same game, same information, same facts, different perspective. So I'm not saying that as a defense, I'm just saying that this is, if you've watched us for long enough, you know I like to go deep and I like to have the information. And what I'm saying is we don't have all the information yet. Is this not a good look? There's no question about that. But it doesn't feel to me like this is the slam dunk that many on the right, especially in the Twitter army, are saying that it is. Nuclear meltdown, all that kind of stuff. It's an interesting addendum, and I want to see what happens next. That's how I feel about it.
It's embarrassing and it's messy, but I mean, if we can make the comparison to Uffendale, it's not in the same league, but it just seems to be, messy, just very messy.
Let me say this as well, Facebook user. You see, if you're using Facebook, if you don't, I don't actually know exactly how it works. If you don't accept there's something within Facebook that you need to accept to be able to chat on this properly. If you're using Facebook and you haven't done that, put your name in the actual questions and we can address you directly. Facebook user, whoever this is, whichever page you're on, what do you think about the meeting the night before? Well, at the moment, as I've kind of said about Gaurav Sharma, I'm prepared to accept what he's saying now because we need information. I'm prepared to accept what the Prime Minister said the other day, which was they needed to have a conversation without him there because there were people who said that they wouldn't speak openly and honestly if he was there because he was sharing things in the media that were private and should have been kept confidential. That's actually one of the breaches they've talked about, is that within that caucus setting, things aren't supposed to be leaked from that caucus setting. That's against their rules and their terms and conditions, their rules, their ethics, whatever the correct terminology is. And so I accept that that's a possibility. So at the moment, I accept that that's what the Prime Minister said, and I accept that that's the reason. If what Gaurav Sharma is saying is accurate right here, then I also accept that that could change. Like, so what I'm saying is, if it's proven beyond shadow of a doubt that that was a meeting, they did take a vote, they did decide the night before they were going to oust him, then I will accept that. But for me to accept that, I need more evidence. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I'm not closed off to it. I'm not an ideologue here, right? I'm not closed off to that. There just needs to be more evidence to make me believe that.
Yeah, it does seem, just on first pass, it does seem really weird that they would have a full caucus meeting the day before and then another one with him meant to be there the next day.
Well, I mean, not to split hairs, it wasn't a full caucus meeting the day before.
Okay.
Because he wasn't there.
Yeah. Oh, well,
it wasn't a caucus meeting. It was a meeting of people who were available. It wasn't everybody. It was most people, but it wasn't a full caucus meeting, which is what the Prime Minister said was one of the, I guess she placed as evidence that there wasn't a vote because not everyone was there and everyone has to be there to make a vote. Now, again, I'll say, it might be a little bit like, you know what the outcome is going to be. Like when the All Blacks are playing Fiji, we know what the outcome is, but you actually have to wait till the end of the 80th minute to get the score. If that means that game, I mean, an All Black versus Fiji game is predetermined, but you don't know what the actual score is until the end of the 80th minute. But because
they're always going to win by 8 to 12 baskets, is my understanding.
What should we use for you? The punk rockers.
Oh God, I have no idea.
The punk show was a predetermined. I don't know, bro. But you know what I'm saying? Like there can be things that are a done deal that can't officially be a done deal until something happens.
Yeah. So
again, that could be no one disputes the facts. We have different perspectives, which is what's already been said in this situation once before. Let's keep going. I'm sorry. You go. No, you can go.
No, I was just going to say the real damage here. If people are, it's nothing to do with who this is. It's nothing to do with even what he's done. To be honest, it's just the fact that this has completely blown apart the comparison of like look at our opposition blowing apart, and they don't have any cohesion, and we do. We're nice and stable, and that's gone now.
Yeah,
it's gone now, and they've got to fix it somehow.
I agree with what Ayrton said as well. Champagne corks must have been flying in the boardrooms of media works when the story broke. Anything to distract the public from national recent negative media attention. I actually wouldn't necessarily agree with the second part of your statement there, Ayrton, because I don't think, this media works and NZME and media companies other than, say, RNZ, we can include TVNZ in there as well, TV3, which is Discovery now, they're profit-making entities. So any salacious story is going to get those boardrooms fired up. Because it's going to be good for their ratings and good for their clickbaits. And, idiot moron news commentators in the South Island are going to comment on them for half an hour at the end of each night and give them more publicity. So I actually think the other place the cork was popping was, is in all the national offices, because we're not talking about Sam Uffindell anymore. He got taken away like that, I think that's probably the happiest people in the world are probably the National Party. And, whatever happens here, Facebook persons come back and say, what evidence could they possibly provide? I'm not sure, but I'm not closed off to the evidence. I mean, if 10 MPs came out and said, look, the truth is this was a done deal the night before and we took a vote, that's probably the big thing for me. Because like I just said really clearly about the All Blacks game, the All Blacks scoring buckets and that kind of stuff, like Chewy said, you know the outcome of something before you get the outcome of something, even though you haven't got it. Does that make sense? You know who's going to win the game if it's the best team in the world versus the worst team in the world, but you can't say what the score is going to be until the following day. What if that's the situation? That means it might have been quote unquote predetermined the night before, or it might have been decided it was going to happen the night before because everyone just knew, but there wasn't a vote, which means it wasn't actually done until the next day. That's and I actually think that's probably quite probable, right? I think it's probably quite realistic to think that all those people in that meeting knew what was going to happen, but it didn't happen until the next day. I think that's probably the most likely scenario. Can I keep going now, Sir Chewy?
Yes, please.
Sir Chewy of Chamalot. Here we go.
So do you think they're afraid of what an investigation will find?
Oh, definitely, yes. Any public inquiry into this will dig up more things.
Would you be worried about what an investigation would find about you?
No, not at all.
The PM has pointed to a mediation process instead.
Do you intend to participate in any kind of mediation?
No, I want a public inquiry which will hold people to account, because as we've seen up until now, it's just a kangaroo court.
So again, with no disrespect to Dr. Sharma, a public inquiry to hold people to account. What has happened that involves that kind of investigation and the QC and the public inquiry? As you've said, Drew, this is an employment dispute. So let's say there was a public inquiry. What would they be looking into? Has the Prime Minister told the truth? That's probably the only accusation that would be worth inquiring. And I'm wondering what else they'd actually be looking into. Unless it's back to his bullying claims. And okay, fair enough. Look into that if you want. I mean, yeah, okay, fair enough. But this feels like this is not about this. This feels like this is about how he has been ejected from Caucus. That's what he's saying. But
it really feels like he's overreaching and lashing out. And I keep on coming back to this. He's just not doing himself any favors. Like he's not. Like I was in his corner when it was first coming out. I was like, I could imagine that there is bullying in Parliament. That's really easy to get to. Yeah. They've had a history of it in the past. But yeah, it just doesn't have the ring of truth to me. Yeah.
Just so David, as well, if he goes, it wouldn't mean a by-election. Although I can see you've got some comments before there that I haven't quite seen yet. It would only be a by-election if he then resigned from politics. If they kicked him out of Labour, he's fully entitled to stay on as an independent it's Hamilton West, is that right? West is best, I think he said.
Yeah, I believe
so if they kick him out of the Labour Party, he's not out of politics. So it wouldn't be it's the same as Uffindell. It's exactly the same situation, actually. I like someone that said Uff and who. Is that if they kick him out of National at the end of this thing, he has to resign his seat to have a by-election. He'll be an independent in Parliament. If he doesn't, he can stay on and be an independent. There is one other claim that we need to get to in this, which we will now, because I think it's actually one of the ones which is more intriguing, although within this article they also do kind of explain why they do this thing. And let's have a listen.
P accusing his colleagues of bullying.
Those guys are bullies. No two ways around it.
Who are they referring to?
He's talking about the leadership of the Labour Party.
So Jacinda Ardern and Calvin Davis?
Well, at least one of them is on TV every day saying there's nothing wrong.
Sharma taking aim at the Labour Party's pride and joy, the Prime Minister accusing her of creating a cover-up culture.
This is the Prime Minister's office trying to cover something. This is the Prime Minister trying to cover something. And I'm saying this isn't just about bullying. There's a lot more here.
Another explosive claim. He says the MP intake of 2020 was recently required to attend a workshop ahead of election year where they were coached on how to keep information out of the public's hands.
One of them was obviously, shut up, don't talk about anything, because we hadn't, not about this, but anything, don't say anything for which the Prime Minister has to stand up and do a media stand up, but also how not to get an OIA issue. So how to talk to somebody without actually having any track record of it so nobody can track it down the road.
Sharma alleges staff in the Prime Minister's office wear two employment hats and pick which one they're wearing when they receive information.
Now, I completely believe that.
Yeah.
I completely believe that. And I think that's not a prime. Personally, I feels like, in fact, this actually goes on. They do address that. So we'll get to it. But when I heard this, watching it on the news, I completely believe that. And I think every politician does it. I think that probably in Christopher Luxon's office, there are multiple hats. We talked about Grant Robertson the other day, talking about his minister's hat versus his local MP's hat. And I think that's completely true. Right. And I think that's completely true for probably all people with a staff. The question is it nefarious and is it used to get around things? Now, they do explain why the Prime Minister's office does this, but I would suspect all offices do that. Staffing arrangements are done in a way that, some staff work part-time for Labour Leader's office and part-time for Prime Minister's office. And when they want to prevent OIA, they just sort of make it that this is a Labour Leader's problem, this is not the Prime Minister's office problem, and then they can get away with it.
Are you comfortable with that?
No, not at all. I mean, this is what I'm saying. The whole thing is set up to prevent any tracking of these issues being raised.
That's a pretty serious allegation.
Well, you tell me then. That's literally what's happening.
On Tuesday, the PM said Sharma was on his last strike.
This is final warning, though.
Yes.
You've already been suspended by the party. Speaking out now the party will likely expel you. Are you prepared for that?
Yeah. What I'm repeatedly asking is a fair trial, and that's what I'm focused on.
Do you think you're going to regret this?
No, why should I regret it? Why should I be the one hiding my face? I haven't done anything wrong.
Well, we'll see if the Prime Minister sees it that way.
So, Jenna, what's the Prime Minister's office had to say about this?
Obviously, we put all of these claims to the Prime Minister's office. Firstly, on that allegation that they're using the split contracts and using different hats to hide information, we didn't get a formal response on that. But I'm told that there is a proper function for those split contracts, and it's so that the Prime Minister's office staff can help non-ministerial MPs like the backbencher who is brutally attacking them in public. We do have an official response on Dr. Sharma's future attributable to a spokesperson for the Prime Minister. They say that on Tuesday, the caucus suspended Gaurav on the basis of repeated breaches of trust. This latest example of releasing and misrepresenting conversations with his colleagues reinforces that decision and will be discussed by caucus. So what you can read into that is that Gaurav's future is not.
That is toast. So the explanation they gave was, yes, our staff do wear two hats, and that's so when help is needed by someone within the party that's not to do with the leader's office, we can still do it. So they basically, I don't think that was the office that said it, but it was explained that that's what it was. Just as we've been kind of going to where this came out just before we came on here, a spokesperson for the Labour leader said caucus would meet on Tuesday to consider a motion to expel Sharma from the caucus. Gaurav has repeatedly breached his colleagues' trust, and caucus was clear that there should be no further breaches such as this, and then further steps would be taken. Now, if indeed the Newshub says they have actually heard that recording, he said he recorded it. Well, it's been said he recorded it secretly, and he has released it that to me, apart from anything else, would be a breach of trust, I guess.
I'm not sure if that's even legal.
It is. I think it is.
It is legal to record someone's conversation.
I remember when John Key. Do you remember when John Key was sitting at the cafe with Peter Dunn and the microphone? I'm 99% sure then, unless the law has changed, that there is a rule that says something like if one person knows that the recording device is being recorded, then it's okay. And the people who had the microphone knew. Person with the headphones on knew. So I'm 99% sure, but because nothing was illegal then, and that was basically a nefarious recording. Happy to be kind of corrected or expanded on that if someone wants to look it up. If you look up John Key microphone cafe Peter Dunn, you'll probably find all that information. Illegal or something, you'll probably find it all. So this is where we're at, and we're talking about various people coming out and nailing things down. So David Farrar, and he has a recording from an MP telling him a secret caucus meeting, the secret caucus meeting, which is technically not what it was, did in fact predetermine his fate. And look, I'll say it again. I know when we say we come from the left, we can walk and chew at the same time. When I say this, some people are going to roll their eyes and go, no, you're always just defending. It's not that at all. It's like, what does predetermined mean? The All Blacks playing Ukraine is a predetermined result, but the game hasn't happened yet. It's not official. So I just need to know. I would need more information. That if the night before they took a vote and it was said this will be the vote tomorrow, he's correct, they're wrong. If the night before it was obvious in the room what was going to happen, but the vote wasn't taken, then he's wrong.
Yeah. I mean, someone could have taken the temperature of the room pretty much and gone, hey, look, we're going to finalize this tomorrow, but how's everybody feeling about what's gone down so far? And I would imagine that the response would be pretty negative at that point. Certainly enough for someone to say, hey, look, there's no wiggle room here, man. You don't have any backers. So, yeah, I mean, that would be one way to look at it.
Yeah.
But nobody was in the room. We don't know.
Yeah. Ms. Ardern suggesting there is a pathway back for Sharma if he behaves. Was that word used? Because when you put quotes around that, it means that's what she actually said. I don't know if he actually said behaves, but I get your point. It's just a sleazy way of gagging him until the next election. This is the reason why he wasn't cancelled from the party altogether. Does anyone seriously believe Labour will select him for Hamilton West in 2024? Answer, get real. Well, not now. I don't think they'll be selecting him for Hamilton. I don't think they'll be selecting him for Hamilton West come October 2022, to be honest with you. And I actually, just out of interest, did they say 2024? I think it's 2023, 2024 is the American election. 12 months from now is the next election. But I mean, people will choose not to believe what was said, but what was said was there's a pathway back for him. If he had worked on that pathway back and it had it done, whether we think it's a fair pathway or a sleazy pathway, then they probably would have selected him again. But as I said, I don't think he'll be a Labour Hamilton West representative within a couple of weeks, personally. We'll see what happens. So we'll wait and see. They are explosive accusations, but more information, please. Show like I want to hear the whole. I'm never going to hear it because they won't release it, but I want to see the transcript for the whole conversation, and then look to see what happens from there. All right. Anything else you want to add on that, the Schumeister?
Oh, just the general. He's got the general vibe of someone being thrown out of a restaurant, just trying to pull the tablecloths on his way out. Yeah. And I'm going to put this up because it's probably the best meme about it I've seen so far.
Damn! I just got leaked this photo of Dr. Sharma addressing the Prime Minister's office. All of you, I have documents on all of you.
If anybody's not familiar with that, you all need to go out and watch The Death of Stalin. It's a fantastic movie.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. Look, let me just remind you as well now, if you have decided to block off the bottom of your screen, that tomorrow night, 10 p.m. live here in the room where it happened, as David's just put Hamilton in my head by mentioning that. You shouldn't have done that, David, because my kids play that on a loop and every single song is now going in my head. is Paula Penfold, reporter, investigative journalist. Paula Penfold will be with us tomorrow from 10 p.m. live. If you're not clear on who Paula is, you probably all have heard of some of the stuff she's made, including the documentary on the leaders of the anti-vaxxer, anti-mandate Wellington protest movement, Voices for Freedom group, called Fire and Fury, which has just been released on stuff. She's going to be with us for the hour tomorrow night live. Happy to take questions and comments. And I suspect will block a few people. Just my gut tells me that, Chewy, that we'll probably block a few people. But
Depends what our reach is.
I'll rephrase that. Chewy will probably block a few people tomorrow night. You know, I've only ever blocked one person in this context. And it's not something we want to do, but you know, if people get abusive and particularly offensive, like, I mean, let's be honest, I just put up a comment from someone that was that one from the Facebook one, which was fairly aggressively not calling us out, but kind of saying you're wrong. It's fine. I'll put it up. Happy to do that. Not a problem.
Yeah, I think my personal yardstick is you can say whatever you want as long as you're respectful to us and the people in the chat, you know, and back your arguments up. Like, yeah. You know, it's sometimes a pretty robust conversation in the chat. So if you come in hot, you're probably not going to get listened to as much as you may want.
Anything in the chat? I know you've starred one. Anything we want to get onto before we get on to the next topic?
Not particularly. I think we're all good to move on.
All right. So this is a little short. Lloyd Burr this afternoon on Toda FM was talking a little bit about local body politics, which is something we've obviously been talking about and want to continue to talk about. And he was basically saying, or he doesn't basically, literally says, most qualified potential candidates are turned off by politics. And what that leads us with is just the Munters. Now, this audio levels are a bit weird, just so you know, it's on their end and it does increase on the way through. So it starts very soft and increases. It's not our end, it's their end. Listen carefully, my friends.
Let's talk about the local elections because they're coming up at the moment. And there's sort of growing concern that far-right conspiracy theorists, that they are sort of getting in on the elections. And it's worried me for a while that really decent, skilled, proactive and highly qualified people aren't attracted to politics. Some of them are, but they leave as soon as they realise that the system chews them up and spits them out, and it's more trouble than it's worth. And it's bad enough in central government, in parliament, but it's even worse in local body politics. There are great community-minded people who would be exceptional mayors and councillors, but they're put off by the whole system. Look at Tauranga. There was Tembi Powell. He was a great person, very qualified to be mayor, overqualified in many ways, and yet the internal feuding of councillors, the constant roadblocking of the system meant that he quit. He called for the commissioners to come in and be appointed, and of course the government did just that. Other good leaders then look at Tembi's experience and they're sort of put off going into local politics, and fair enough too. Why would you want to work your bum off trying to change your local city or district for the better, and then you don't actually get the best pay for it? So why on earth would you do it? So it's hardly any surprise that anyone would put up their hands to become mayors or councillors. And when you've got a void like this, it's often filled with Munters. You get absolute Munters standing for local councils. And when I say Munters, I mean, you know, extremists, anti-government, conspiracy living sort of dropkicks who've got no desire to make our cities and districts better. They want to disrupt the system. They want to break it apart. And it's sad. But mainly, it's just extremely worrying because these people, they might be able to hold our councils to ransom. They'll block progress. They'll go further down the rabbit hole and we'll all be worse off because of it. So my question is this: how do we change politics so our best and our brightest find it alluring, so we can use their skills and their passion for good? Because otherwise, our councils will become cesspools.
Use it for good.
I can answer this right now. I can solve it.
Go. Yeah.
Take Facebook off everybody.
Yeah.
Just block Facebook. Because I mean, have you jumped into any bloody story about the council or the elections on Facebook lately? It's a fucking zoo. People who have no idea how council works. The overall feeling that the mayor is somewhat akin to a king, and it is just issuing edicts on high. You know, it's mad. I don't think half the people that comment on local politics ever vote.
Yes,
but yeah, it's a lack of desire, but it's also a lack of engagement from the constituents.
Yeah, I think the evidence for that is also in what the numbers that turn out.
Yeah,
because it's like a 30% turnout rate, and it's probably of those 30%, 90% of those are sort of 40 to Gen Xers and up, put it that way.
Mm.
So mid 40s and up sort of thing are the majority. People with the houses, people who pay the rates, that kind of stuff are the only ones who seem to show interest.
It's that structural aspect. Like, I keep on banging on about this, but as long as you own a house somewhere, you can vote in that area where you live in it or not, or vote in all of them. You want to vote in every local body election in the country, just own a house in every bloody electorate.
I wonder if that'll change one day. I mean, there's a call for that to change. There's a call for basically you only to be allowed to vote in your residence. Although there's going to be ways around that. I mean, like, for example, where we are in Dunedin and Central Otago is a holiday spot. I used to live in Auckland. Northland was a holiday spot, and I know people, especially retired people, that might spend half their time in each area and might try to flout the system. But probably 99% of multiple property owners would have to declare a residence, and it would be obvious that that was where they spent most of their time. Would be a pretty good way around it, but. Yeah, I mean, but the flip side of that is if you're paying rates for a property, let's say in Queenstown or Wanaka and you live in Dunedin, or Mangawhai Heads, which is where we used to hang out, or Whangarei and you live in Auckland, then you should also possibly have some kind of right to speak into that process as well, because it impacts you. So I can see both sides, but I think probably the one vote, one people is the idea generally, isn't it?
I mean, I'd like to consider myself a pretty politically active person. The first local body election I voted in was in the last one.
Right.
And that was, I've never been interested. It was never aimed at me in the same way that the central, the national level elections were aimed at everyone. What was in it for me?
Yeah, I think Rose talking about the VFF people, those dipsticks, thinking our mayors have the same power as they do in America.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And just to underline this thing, the mayor is one vote, and he's a tiebreaker, and he's a representative for the city for central government, and that's it. He's still got to get the council to agree.
So what happens if, let's say, I'm thinking about Dunedin now, a particular person was to get in for mayor, and I genuinely don't know this. This just shows my disengagement with the whole process, although I do vote. If they want to take a certain direction, but all the other councillors don't, can all the other councillors basically force the hand and change? Like, if there's 12 of them, if there's 11 councillors and a mayor, and the 11 councillors want to take it in a certain direction, does that mean the mayor is obsolete? Doesn't serve any purpose at all?
Pretty much. Like, he's a chairperson. He controls the debate. It's almost like a functional role, is my understanding.
Huh.
But he is one vote, or he or she is one vote.
Sexist.
It's a bad. I'm just thinking because our mayor is a he. That was in my head.
I don't know what his pronouns are, so I can't speak to that.
Well, I do. but yeah, you're right. If someone got enough votes to be mayor and was unliked by the rest of the council, or even a majority of the council, then you have an absolute shitstorm. So they've got to stand up there and lead the council.
Doesn't that mean that if you do get a particularly unlikable, like, let's say hypothetically there is a group of old racist people in a city in New Zealand that like one particular candidate, and because only old people tend to vote in these things, that candidate becomes mayor, but all the other councillors disagree with the direction that the mayor's basically pledged he'll take the city, that literally that mayor could do nothing.
Well, in that absolutely
hypothetical,
outlandish hypothetical situation that would never happen. There's never been a cabal of old rich white people controlling local government. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. That actually makes the mayoralty kind of less important then, doesn't it? What's more important then is actually the makeup of the council.
Yeah. And I mean, to take our council as an example, there seems to be a centre left segment of the council, and there seems to be a very business focused right wing. And I don't mean right wing in the nasty way, they're just more business focused, and
sure,
that's fine. I'm not anti-business. And then there's a couple of people that go, I'm going to take each decision on its merits, and I'm going to swing it one way or the other. And that seems to be fine. But if there is a disconnect, well, you need to get up again.
It's telling me to fucking stand up. It's bullying.
No, it's telling
me.
you to stand for local body elections. It's too late now.
Because, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
The best quote from, what was that movie? Sucker Punch. I love that movie. Very problematic, but I like it. But yeah, I mean, to get back to the point of what we're talking about, the huge deviation there. Why would someone that has an idea for, local body elections attract people that are thinking about their city? It's not the huge ideal. It is, I want to make the place where I live better, in my opinion. Why would you do that when you just see all the hate that council gets? They're useless, they're corrupt, they don't listen to the people, and all they're trying to do is fucking replace the pipes and make the streets look a bit better afterwards. I mean, I saw the council getting flack when they announced that they were adding new playground equipment around the city.
Wow.
And it's like, who gets on and go, they're wasting our money on slides and swings. They should be fixing the pothole outside my house. It's...
to come back to what your solution was, you're kind of right, because, there's that old adage, and I'll bastardize the quote, and I'm not sure actually who said it. I've said enough that I'll just claim it for my own, is that the problem with social media is it teaches people that because they've got something to say, that thing is important. Because they can go or whatever it is, and because it can literally go around the world, for some reason people think that their thoughts are important, when actually the truth is most of our thoughts most of the time mean jack shit. But social media gives you a chance to get very easily 1,000 people together who think the same thing, and then you get the apparent evidence of importance when it still really isn't. Alrighty. Yeah, look, it's that's intriguing. And just to remind people who are in Dunedin, or if you're not in Dunedin, you can watch it as well, because it'll be on this channel, whatever channel you're watching us on, is that I'm going to be talking to, and I think I am talking to all 11 now. I think I got my final confirmation today.
Oh, nice.
Dunedin mayoralty candidates. And that will be happening starting on the 27th. They're going to happen in the weekend, Saturday or Sunday afternoons. First one's on the 27th in the afternoon, which is a Saturday in the afternoon about 2:00, and then there's one on that Sunday, then the following Saturday, Sunday, and the following Saturday, Sunday, up until the election, before I run away. I'm running away on election weekend, and I'll be in Auckland. So my Auckland peeps, I'll see you then. Right, let's have a look at this. Remember that I queued this up at the start of the show. And I said that, if I'm honest, sometimes I feel a bit like a 50s dad, and sometimes I feel like an enlightened leftist. And I really don't know how I feel about this. Disturbing sex ed handout given to young students. Innocence stolen, says Mum.
Well,
what? No, just wait for a second, all right? Just wait for a second.
And I'm going to put my hand up. I'm the childless one here. So
do you have any nieces or nephews?
No.
Nothing.
No.
Do you look over your fence and watch the 11-year-olds next door with a smile?
No, I stay in my house like a good man. Right. Like the closest, my best friend, he's got a couple of young girls under 6. He's an early childhood teacher as well, and I suppose I got nieces and nephews over in Aussie and that sort of thing. But yeah.
So let me just read a little
coming from.
Lead a little bit of this. A Northland mum wants sex education in the classroom reviewed after a disturbing school handout stole her 12-year-old daughter's innocence, she says. She and other parents are removing their children from, I haven't even looked at the name of the school, so it's going to be Tauraroa Area School, in the wake of a 2-page document given to pupils aged 11 to 13. Principal Grant Burns has apologized for the handout that was designed to answer anonymous student questions in a, quote, factual, free of shame or embarrassment, end quote, way. The first sheet addressed curiosities about periods, toxic relationships, privates, or whether the teacher preferred chicken nuggets over dino nuggets, how to grow hair on, quote, fake balls, and why monkeys are fat. Page 2 answered how is sex done, by explaining the 5 different legal classifications of sex: genital, digital. That's where you use your calculator. I think I'm not entirely sure.
It's different from analog.
Your Casio digital calculator. Object, oral, and anal. 11-year-olds, just stick with me, 50s dad. People should find a partner who is considerable to their needs and who can communicate about their desires to achieve a respectful sexual relationship. Part of the answer read. Byrne said every question was assumed to be authentic. Moron. Fuck, I've done this when I was 15 at high school, and the questions we put in weren't authentic. What idiots these guys are. So was answered factually without bias. I sincerely apologize for this information being shared to our young people through our school. He said it's regrettable that the information went beyond the scope of sexuality program as outlined to parents. So in other words, they went beyond what their remit was and what parents understood it was going to be. We acknowledge that a balance must be struck between providing open and factual information and keeping information relevant to the ages of the students involved. He apologized for the handout. He said, everyone involved had become acutely aware of the harm sharing inappropriate information can cause. Now, the mum of the 12-year-old daughter who came home with the really weird, quote unquote, handout says there is no reversing the damage. To me, this does feel a bit pearl clutchy, but we'll get to the actual document, which I have shortly. To me, it felt like such an invasion because they had taken her innocence in a sense. I think what makes me the angriest is I can't go back in time and take that from her head. It's done. I feel dirty and yuck knowing it's being taught to such young minds. That's what's so disturbing to me. The handout came shortly after the mum had paused her daughter's participation in sexuality education, which only began the start of this term. She had been carefully working through the curriculum to determine what was appropriate for her daughter, so she didn't go too far ahead for her age. She said her daughter was taken out of Friday's lesson as a precaution, but was still given the handout. Oh, that's a shame. I didn't notice it before. And when her daughter arrived home, she showed her mum the papers. I was fuming at the start, her mum said. I had to say to her, sorry, I'm not angry at you. You've done nothing wrong. I'm just frustrated this has happened when I've asked for it not to happen. Finally, last little bit. Tauraroa Area School Principal Grant Byrne says, we're caught in an ever-changing world where the internet is a significant source of sometimes not accurate information for kids. I try to guide her as much as possible, she said. Well, this is about mum again. Adding, her husband has fostered an environment where we can have very open conversations with their children. We've always used normal words like penis and vagina because we want to be normal, to be a normal thing, but to talk to 11 and 12-year-olds about sex toys, that's what she keeps talking about. She's like, what are those? What do they look like? Left to their own devices, a child's probably going to start Googling because you've just sparked this curiosity that wouldn't have otherwise been there. So you're welcome to jump in right now, and then I'll show you the document.
You know what? I'm of a different generation, obviously, but I remember looking up these words in a dictionary. So we live in a world where the internet exists. If a responsible adult isn't going to step in and talk to these kids at this age, then they're going to get that information in a completely uncontrolled manner from the shit funnel that is the entire internet. If they've got an internet-connected device, if their friends have an internet-connected device, you know, we're far beyond finding a porno in a bush. It is everywhere. I think it is a little bit pearl clutchy, but you know, when you're talking about 11 and 12-year-olds, these are kids that are capable of having sex. And I think a lot of parents have a thing of like, no, we'll only talk to them about this when they're 14, 15. And, you know, you can get in a lot of trouble before you're 14 and 15. But as I said, I am the childless one here. I have ideas that are based off talking to parents in shops about technology. So, you know, it's like I've run the gamut of parents that are like, no, my kid's just not having the internet. And I'm like, well, it's going to be spectacular when they go around to their friend's place. I think
when the principal said we don't want them to, he basically said we don't want them to get wrong information off the internet. Obviously, I think most of us would applaud that.
Yeah.
But I think what the mother said about these ideas weren't in this child's head before. I was being careful with the school and actually probably doing the right parenting thing by going, ultimately I should have the say, and I was checking out what was coming up and I withheld her from that particular class to then be given the the flyer anyway, you kind of go, well, I can see why she's annoyed as well.
That's honestly, that's fair enough.
Yeah, as a parent, you kind of want to have him, and she obviously was engaged with the school, whether we agree or disagree with her views on sexuality or sex. She was obviously engaged enough to know what was going on, and as a parent, I don't know whether her child was 11 or 13, to a point. Now, I'll show you the document. Now, there is a pretty big difference between an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old. I know it doesn't sound like a big difference, but actually developmentally, females, for example, most 13-year-olds will be having their period. Most 11-year-olds won't. There's actually quite a big difference. And because this is 2 11 to 13-year-olds, I kind of want to focus on 11-year-olds. Yeah. Not to kind of make a point that I'm sort of hinting at better, but this is a reality of some of the kids that were given these documents. Here's the document, right? So I'm going to have to read this because we have an audio podcast. So here we go.
Strap in, folks.
Well, that's actually, no, it's not one of the things I'm going to say.
I know. I said strap in, not strap on.
Yeah. Okay. So the page, this is not the whole thing, but the page that these parents seem to be most offended by was the page titled, How Was Sex Done? This is the document. Okay. How is sex done? This is what was given to 11-year-olds. There are 5 different legal classifications of sex. Genital, which is penis, vaginal penetration. Digital, which apparently is not a calculator. It is, quote, sexually pleasuring someone with your hand or feet. Fingers are digits. Latin words digitus, meaning finger or toe, counting to 10 from hands. English coined the word to mean numbers. With an object, inserting an object, e.g. dildo, sex toy, to gain pleasure. Oral, pleasuring someone's genitals with your mouth and tongue. Fellatio, stimulating the penis with one's mouth. Cunnilingus, which I can't ever say. Not that I say it a lot, but when it comes up in casual conversation. Stimulating the clitoris and vagina with one's mouth. Anal, inserting fingers, penis, object into your partner's anus for sexual pleasure. There are many different aspects to sex. There is the physical act of sex through one of the classifications above, which may or may not lead to orgasm, ejaculation of seminal fluid and sperm for men, or orgasm, rhythmic contractions in the uterus, vagina, or pelvic floor muscles for women. Sorry, I'm just hearing myself read this stuff out loud and thinking about like the podcast.
I'm learning a lot.
Good. Keep your hands up where I can see them, please. People are sexually aroused by various things and therefore will find different things sexually satisfying. People should find a partner who is considerate to their sexual needs and can communicate about their desire to achieve a respectful sexual relationship. And then the second part of the page, which we don't have it in entirety, is talking about gay and lesbian sex and how that works. And basically, I think it's a repeat of the above, but talking a bit about same-sex marriages, same-sex relationships can do the same thing. So now that you've heard the what some people would describe as quite graphic detail, Shuey, and thinking about an 11-year-old, just that document and an 11-year-old, what are your thoughts?
I think that's really matter of fact. I mean, it's just statement of fact. This is what all of the things are. It's difficult. I could imagine it being a really emotive thing for a parent. I'm not in that place, so I just really can't. Like, I don't see a problem with it. It's not graphic. It's just a matter of fact description of what's going on. I think it's a shame that this, maybe there needs to be more engagement with the parents, but they also need to be open to it as well. They're not going to shut their daughter in a box. These are going to be things that are going to be discussed. Like I think back to when I was 11 or 12 and stuff like that, and these were the things that 11 and 12-year-old boys were discussing. And we had no idea, no fucking idea. And that means you can just really get into some serious trouble.
I just think about my 11-year-olds. Like I've had 3 of them.
That's the thing. I don't have that.
I feel like
I am seeing it as really dry. So I mean, your kid was 11. They got that. What would be your reaction? I mean, how did your kid's school broach the subject of sex education?
I think it was more, and I think the thing that rings true, and someone's actually said it in the chat somewhere about, I put it up, didn't I? This one here, I think it's Roe. Age appropriate. Not all 11-year-olds are the same. The comment that rang true, and I think that's what the principal kind of came back to, realizing that maybe some of the detail, about inserting dildo sex toys into your anus and stuff, that for an 11-year-old is a pretty, I think it's, I don't think the word graphic is correct, but I think it's maybe not, certainly within a curriculum, what necessarily needs to go to an 11-year-old without explicit parental consent. That's probably a part of it as well. Like I sometimes think about schools and I go, if you want to do this, why don't you just send it off to the parents first and say, we're going to be doing this on Friday. If there's an overwhelming objection, we won't do it. Or if there's not, we are going to do it and you have the right to pull the kid out. Because then you don't face this kind of stuff. You're like, the parents know about it beforehand. It might sound like more bureaucracy on top and be harder, but I just kind of think, think how they could make it.
But again, it's like, okay, cool. Your kid doesn't do that module or that lesson or whatever. Everybody in her class does. It's all they're going to be talking about anyway. Like, the kid doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Yeah, but then again, I mean, kids that have religious beliefs and stuff sometimes get pulled out of things for various reasons, or whatever. I don't think that's necessarily the biggest deal. Thread says, as a mother of three, not appropriate for an 11-year-old. Hey, Threads, while you're watching, do you feel different about a 13-year-old? Because I think that's probably me, Chewy. I feel a bit different about a 13-year-old hearing this than an 11-year-old hearing this. It does feel a bit different to me, because there is a significant difference in maturity, both physically and emotionally, between an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old. So Threads, you're a mother of three. You say not appropriate for an 11-year-old. You've got like 30 seconds to type again and tell us, would it make a difference to you if it was a 13-year-old? But yeah, look, the thing about this is I also think the story that we read off Newstalk ZB didn't really give the full context, which is sort of what we've been talking a bit about tonight, of the story. When you hear the more graphic nature of what was actually said within that document, that can that at least gives you the full context of what are we talking about here. Not just, these 50s dads, man, get over yourself. Everyone's talking about sex today. Yeah, not everyone's talking about stimulating the penis with one's mouth or stimulating the clitoris and vagina with one's mouth. So there's a difference between saying it's sex ed and it's talking about how to insert a dildo into your anus. That's could be seen as two different levels of information.
I mean, I can certainly think back to when I was in late preteens, early teens, and I can think of people in my circle that were doing stuff, without any sex education at all, apart from having a giant giraffe puppet and a dark fan come around and tell us about it.
What was Harold?
Harold the giraffe. So I mean, like there's the generational difference. These guys got a quite matter of fact legal definition of what sex ed was. I had a talking giraffe tell me about it. So, but yeah, and I mean that was, that would have been at the end of my primary school, the last couple of years. So 11, 12.
Yeah.
But not as graphic, but there was.
I liked it. The bit I liked best about Harold was when he reached under the thing and pulled out a dildo and showed how to insert it into the anus. That was the bit I liked best about when Harold came around in his caravan. That was the best bit.
I don't think you went in the official Harold van. That doesn't sound legit.
There was that guy that wanted to do the extra credit stuff. That wasn't okay. Joe says, do these same parents let their kids go on TikTok and the likes, because some of the content on those platforms is just as bad, if not worse, obviously depend on what. But let me just say this, we don't know the answer to that, but I would think that a parent that's engaged as that, wanting to know what's coming up in the curriculum, is probably less likely to allow their child to have free access to social media. That I would say, we don't know, but my guess would be less likely.
Yeah.
Less likely.
Yeah. And look, from the discussions that I've had with customers around, say, little Lucy or little Timmy's first cell phone, it's an area of huge concern for a lot of parents, because again, there's that generational gap with technology. But I never had to deal with this when I was a kid growing up, and I was like, yeah, exactly. So I mean, that you can't just give little Timmy an iPhone and let him lock himself in his room, because he's going to learn some stuff and he's going to learn it wrong.
Yep. No, I used to work with the parenting group.
It's a race to beat that. It's a race to beat that. And I think, like, the parents, I think,
Well, I used to work with
Race
the
to
parenting.
beat the tech.
I used to work with a parenting group. Like I didn't work in there. I worked with them in their radio shows and that kind of stuff and did the production for them. And a guy called Ian Grant, who was sort of a bit of a parenting guru back in the day, and started all these things up. Parents, I think it's Parents Inc. What's it called now? The Parenting Place is what it's called now. He started that off as a different iteration way back when. And he used to, so there was lots of conversations going on about, you know, when the internet was happening and when it was coming out. And the rule of the day was, you know, for your kids, have a computer in a public place, like as in the lounge. Let them do the homework in the lounge, because then the parents can be around and they can see what's going on. But now, you know, we've got these things in our pockets, and these things are more powerful than the early spaceships, literally, and have more power to them. And so it's a whole different ball game now, because this is now in their pocket. It's not a, you know, what is it, D4XA, XRF, whatever they are, and a computer with a big, massive, fat CRT screen sitting in your lounge. It's this, which is by far and away more powerful than that ever could have been. And so it's a whole new parenting realm. And look, I'm going through it at the moment with my youngest doesn't have a cell phone. I think we've lost Chewy. My youngest doesn't have a cell phone. We've kind of decided cell phones when they get to secondary school, and I've got one out of school, obviously doing what they want, and I've got one at secondary school, and there are some restrictions for times around cell phones, or else they're on them till 2 a.m, and then they're too tired to go to school. So 4860X, that's what I was thinking, David. Thank you. And yeah, so my 16-year-old has restrictions on the phone, and that's just the way it is. Like it gets turned off and shut down. And Apple's got quite a good product, the family sharing thing, which is what we're using. And my youngest doesn't have a phone. And I do get a bit frustrated sometimes. Here's the 50s dad in me. I do get a bit frustrated sometimes when, you know, people talk about, you know, their 10-year-olds and stuff needing phones, and it's all utter horse shit. You know, there's probably been 2 times, my youngest is at intermediate school now. We've been there for, you know, last year and this year. There's probably been 1 or 2 times that it would have been useful for me to get a hold of her at intermediate school. And one of the times I needed to get a hold of her, I just put a message through the office, just like we used to do before having cell phones. So, cell phones from secondary school, not at primary school, not at intermediate school. That's what we've decided, and restrictions on them. How does the Apple parent thing work? Joe, I don't have time to go through every detail right now, but I think it's called family sharing. If you look up family sharing, you'll probably find it. And if you go to your settings, I might be able to do it. You go to your settings, and then you go to your profile picture, and then at the bottom of your profile picture, there's a thing that says family sharing, and it's all in there. You can set it up. So go to your whatever it's called, your settings, your profile picture, family sharing down the bottom, and you can put restrictions on through there. For a little while, I actually paid a group called, it was called iPact or something, Our Pact. That was a restrictions thing as well, that you could actually put restrictions on the phone, because, you know, their cell phones fire off synapses in the head like alcohol does. Like literally, they're the same firings in the head. So there's a very real issue with young people around the world at the moment of phone addictions. And you wouldn't just open up your liquor cupboard and let your 16-year-old have access to your vodka and over there openly and honestly and say, go for it. If it can have the same detrimental impact on their brains as a cell phone, why do we just open it up our cell phones and say, go for it? I'm just, you know, I get that there'll be a lot of people who won't agree with me, and they'll think that I'm a monster for having that kind of, it's not control, but more control. But, you know, my job is to get my kids through as much as I can, as easily as I can, through schooling and beyond, to be as successful as they can be, to live up to their to the levels of outcomes that they can. And these things here will turn somebody, like from an A student to a C student or to a D student, and not do papers because they get caught up on things like TikTok and that. Right, there's my old man rant for the day. As we're talking, here comes Chewy. He came back. Sir came back. He came back.
What the?
He came back. Chewy needs a new computer.
No, I bloody don't.
Needs a new computer.
I need to sort out what's doing it. I don't need a new computer.
Tell the missus you need a new computer. It's a good way to get it.
No, I did that just before lockdown last year, and I got a $4,500 one. So this is fine.
Time for an upgrade. I was just having a bit of a rant from my old man thing about cell phones. You just cut out in time. I said, in fact, I'm starting to have conversations with part of your company because my 13-year-old doesn't have a cell phone because they don't get cell phones till they're at secondary school. That's our rules, and that's how we roll. All right. Yep. You've missed all my old man wise words. Do you want to wrap up with anything? Because I've just had the last kind of 3 minutes to rant. Anything you want to add before we head off?
No, look, I just want to go. It's a changing world. I see there's a couple of comments in the chat about, it's not the place of the schools to discuss any of this. I disagree.
I disagree with that too.
Probably unsurprising. A school's job is to prepare kids for the world, and some parents are great at that, and some parents are fucking shithouse at it.
Yeah.
And school for a lot of people is the one consistent thing. We're teaching all the kids this. We're teaching all the kids this because that's the whole idea with the curriculum, that people end up with the same information. If parents want to add that, mold that, they spend more time with the kids, they'll certainly be able to do that.
There is this idea about age appropriateness though, because I'm sure, and I'm just trying to, because you know me, I'm examples man, yeah. Normally involving the All Blacks. But there are some things that we decide they don't need to know all the details on.
Yeah.
Like there are things in class that we go, you don't need to know all the details on that. It's not appropriate for us to. And I don't actually know. I am clutching at straws now. So I'm aware that what I'm about to say, I don't really have a follow through for. But, if there was something within the health syllabus that talked about suicide, we wouldn't be like, well, there's hanging and there's slitting the wrist. And if you slit your wrist, what you do is you put it there and you go this way.
Yeah.
We wouldn't get into all the details, but we could talk about the subject matter. And I just wonder, in this current age we're living in, it's almost like a second iteration of the free love 60s thing, that I haven't thought this out before. And Chewy, I'm someone who thinks as they speak, so it's not a fully formed thought yet. It'll come over the next few days. Pardon for the word, shouldn't use the word come there. But I wonder if we have decided as a society, or teachers have decided within their schools, if kids have to know everything about sex, that's the most important thing in the world. But there's other things that they will have lines in the sand where they don't discuss everything about. And I wonder why that is at the moment. And I don't have an answer to that, but I just wonder.
A little bit of a tangent, but what I have seen and have heard of is that there is also a lot more discussion about respectful or healthy relationships.
Yeah.
And I think that's enormously important going forward. When I think of Sophie, who got stabbed to death because she was in a toxic relationship here in Dunedin.
Sophie Elliott.
Yeah, I used to work with Sophie, so that's very much on my mind. And that was what her mum set up a trust, was a thing about putting boundaries and respect in relationships and that sort of thing. There's lots of things that schools do that don't fit into reading, writing, and arithmetic. I probably would have pulled a lot more out of that than learning how to make a shitty screwdriver in third form. So,
I'm sure we all made the birdhouse, and we all made the thing to carry the milk home, even though milk wasn't being delivered to our homes anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
What you did.
But look, school's a developing thing. And often with kids, there's such a generational difference. But there's obviously a generational difference between the world that they're growing up in and the world that their parents are in. It's a tool. It's a tool to be used. But I've really enjoyed this discussion because, as I said, I don't have a kid. Don't have to worry about it.
And it's good to to have all perspectives on this. I mean, like I said, the thing at the end, it's not fully formed. It may become fully formed over the next wee while. It may not ever come fully formed, but it's like when it's a silly way to word it, but when media companies, like I'm thinking of the Fox News of the world, they kind of go, well, we always talk about both sides. We always talk, and they don't. They just use that as a way to put out information that they want to put out there. Because if we said to them, let's talk about the virtues of teen suicide, they wouldn't talk about both sides of that.
Yeah.
So there are lines they draw in the sand. And I guess I feel like my question is, are we draw a line in the sand about some things we teach kids? It feels like that sex and sexuality at the moment is something that maybe we don't have the line we once had. And maybe society's in a bit of a we're moving a little bit to whatever the new normal will be. But when you're moving, as you know, if you're moving, it's awkward and it's hard and things don't fit in the back of the truck quite well. Probably shouldn't use that analogy of talking about sex either. But this is a moment of change. Now, whether that change is good or bad, we don't know until we get the end of it. But maybe that's a part of it. Maybe.
Yeah. Oh, this has been good. We've had many good chats and many exchanges of information and thoughts.
And I need a haircut,
which is the aim.
Don't you reckon I need a haircut?
Yeah, cool. Flaunt your hair. That's awesome. I'm on the way to looking like a National Party leader. So, that's not ideal.
I haven't had my haircut since pre-Omicron. That's why it's as long as this. People think that I wear caps because I've got no hair. I have the opposite problem. I'd actually really happily be bald. Because
the first time you took your hat off, my first reaction was, you bastard.
Yeah, fuckwit. All right. Hey, thanks, guys. We've enjoyed tonight. Yeah, it's this bit of a meandering conversation at the end. Now, remember, there's a rumor going around that tomorrow night, live at 10 p.m., Paula Penfold will be with us. Paula Penfold is the investigative journalist and chief reporter at Stuff Circuit and made the documentary Fire and Fury, which is, of course, one of the biggest news stories in the country at the moment. She's going to be with us live from 10 p.m. So we'll take your questions, we'll take your comments, and we'll ban some people. I'm sure it'll be fun. And if you want to be involved, get along. And also, probably because of what's happening and what we heard about this week, which actually wasn't part of the documentary, but it's kind of come post-documentary about the Voices for Freedom groups and those sorts of people wanting to get into local body politics, then it's probably going to be quite an interesting and potentially quite important conversation we're having. So bring your keyboard warrior selves along, tell your friends about it, follow us on Twitter. And when we tweet out the links and that kind of stuff, pass them around to some other people, and we'll look forward to catching up with you guys tomorrow night from 10 p.m. here in a big, hairy news. All right, Chewy. Thanks, you, sir.
Cool. Cheers, mate.
Thank you, team. We'll talk to you all tomorrow night.